Hi, this is Kendall Yoder. I'm going to be talking about gamification and game-based learning. So gamification and game-based learning are similar, but they're not quite the same. Gamification is turning like everyday activity into a game or a competition, and game-based learning is kind of using games to help the learning process. So, for example, gamification might be something like PBIS, where in our school we have dragon dollars with little strips of paper that we hand out for good behavior. And it just kind of incentivizes that good behavior because they get a reward and then they get to spend that reward at the end of the week. Um, where game-based learning is something more like a Kahoot or a Blooket, where the game is actually part of the learning process, where we're doing a formative assessment, exposing them to vocabulary, but it's more fun. Some pros and cons. Obvious pros are the motivation and engagement portion, where students are looking forward to the new thing. They're more engaged and having fun, and students want to be at school learning. But some cons are that it's a little bit more time consuming for the teacher. You have to put in time putting in the correct answers and the incorrect answers on a Blooket or a Kahoot, putting in all the definitions onto a Quizlet, filling out all the different prompts on different games. So it's just a little bit more time consuming and uses a lot more resources. And then it also is not super applicable in the real world, where you don't really have that extrinsic motivation. You have to be more intrinsically motivated. But some kind of counter arguments to those two cons, or at least to the intrinsic motivation one, is that I feel like when you want someone to be extrinsically motivated, you want it to just be because it feels good to them, so they're going to do it, and that's why that's why they do things, is because it makes them feel good. And kids that don't ever have that sense of success don't really necessarily, they're not just going to find that and be extrinsically motivated. So you have to train them on what that good feeling of success looks like, even if they are extrinsically motivated at first. So for integration, like I mentioned, PBIS is, I think, a really good way of doing that. And other ways to kind of gamify the classroom is through things like class points, where for every A, let's say the classroom gets a ribbon, and then after so many ribbons, then you get a pizza party, something like that, where it's like a whole class, there's some camaraderie there, everyone's kind of cheering each other on to do well. And then for the game-based learning, I like to use Kahoots and Blooket, like I mentioned before, where the learning is actually part of the game, and the game is part of the learning, and we just use those for like formative assessments, exposing them to that vocabulary. Some apps that I really like are Quizlet. Class Dojo is a really good option if you don't really have PBIS in your school, but you want to do it in your classroom. You can use Dojo points, and they have positive points and they have negative points, and you can put on there like there's like a hitting emoji if someone gets hit or something like that. And then I think Flippity.net is a really good resource for gamification and game-based learning, because they have templates for making games and they have templates for badges and rewards and progress tracking and all that stuff. So that's a really cool resource that I enjoy using and think is really cool. What I said here is, as a 21st century educator, I will use the technology or technological resources that are proven to be effective in teaching my students. And I think that's really important as a 21st century educator, is that we're using 21st century research to aid our teaching, because if we're just using technology for the sake of technology, it's not actually doing the students any good. We want to make sure that the technology that we're using is effective. There are lots of online programs and technological resources that just don't work because they aren't actually backed in science. And so I want to make sure that we are using the correct technology for what we're doing. And here are my references.